Tonight, a University of Arizona professor shares his views on the comparisons between recent college campus protests and anti-war demonstrations over the Vietnam War in the 1960s.
So history professor David Gibbs says the Biden administration has to be concerned about the possible impact on November's election. But first, he shared his memories of the Vietnam War protests.
I remember the mass demonstrations, seeing them on television, the extraordinary commitment, basically, of student demonstrators against the war, the huge numbers of people in Washington. You had demonstrations in the hundreds of thousands against the war. And it did look like an authentic kind of national uprising of young people.
In the 1960s, many of the left were against the Vietnam War. Many on the right supported the war. University of Arizona professor of history David Gibbs explains the similarities between then and now.
But they support, on the right, Israel and American support for Israel, whereas on the left, it's the opposite. You get people who support American intervention in Ukraine but oppose it in Israel. On the other hand, you also get people on both sides of the aisle who are opposed to war generally.
The 1968 National Democratic Convention in Chicago became ground zero for anti-war demonstrators. Chicago will also host the Democratic Convention this summer.
In 1968, you had a very disorderly convention with mass demonstrations and what some have termed a police riot, with violent police resistance to the demonstrators. It undoubtedly damaged the Democratic brand in the 1968 election. I'm sure many in the White House and the Democratic National Committee are very worried about the prospect for what might happen.
Well, in terms of his campaign, I am thinking back, and other people are making this reference, that this may be Biden's Vietnam.